Let me tell you something that will change the way you show up in the world. Stop asking for directions from people who've never left their comfort zone. Seriously, think about it. You want to start a business, move to another country, change careers, speak up for yourself, or wear what makes you feel alive. And the first people to raise their eyebrows are the ones who've never even tried. It's always the aunt who stayed in the same town for 40 years and thinks ambition is arrogance, or your high school friend who still lives at home, working a job she complains about every day, warning you that your dreams are too risky. But here's what they don't tell you: people judge what they don't understand. They feel uncomfortable watching you do something they don't have the courage to do themselves. And instead of reflecting on their own fear, they try to project it onto you. Their opinion isn't truth. It's just their own limitations dressed up as concern. If you don't admire their life, why are you craving their approval? Their opinions were never meant to guide you. You weren't born to play it safe. You were born to break cycles, not repeat them. So the next time someone questions your path, ask yourself, would I trade places with them? Would I want their version of success, their version of joy, their version of freedom? If the answer is no, then their judgment holds no weight. Also, have you noticed that we live in a world that confuses attention with worth? That likes on a post somehow translate into whether we're valid, lovable, seen. But here's the truth: 5 likes is not just 5 likes. That's 5 human beings, 5 souls, 5 full stories. And if your art, your words, your voice reached even one of them deeply, that's already enough. Because real connection is never measured in numbers, it's felt in energy. You weren't put here to decorate a feed, to water yourself down into something palatable just to be liked. You were put here to create, express, speak, serve, live with purpose. When you shift from performing for approval to creating from authenticity, something magical happens. You become untouchable. Because when the crowd stops clapping, you're still standing. You're not here to impress, you're here to impact. And impact doesn't always look loud. It looks like one woman deciding not to betray herself today. One message that makes someone cry because they finally feel seen. One voice that says what someone else is too scared to say. That's real. That's powerful. That's you. Let me explain something that will save you so much confusion. When you grow, not everyone will clap. Some will flinch, some will get quiet, some will turn against you completely. And it's not because you've done something wrong, it's because your evolution exposes their stagnation. When you start healing, when you start setting boundaries, when you start showing up for yourself instead of shrinking to fit their comfort, people feel that, and they don't like it. Not because you're wrong, but because your growth holds up a mirror to what they refuse to change. You suddenly become a reminder of everything they're avoiding in themselves. There are people who only knew how to love you when you were broken, insecure, silent. The version of you who was easy to manipulate, easy to access, easy to control. And now that you're setting standards, choosing peace, choosing self-respect, they're uncomfortable because the old version of you made them feel good. The healed version, it exposes their unhealed parts. Don't take it personally when people distance themselves, or worse, try to sabotage you. It's not always jealousy. Sometimes it's shame. Sometimes it's ego. Sometimes it's fear that if you could change, then maybe they could too. And that realization is too painful for them to accept. But you don't owe anyone your old self just to keep them comfortable. Let them stay where they are if they choose, but don't you dare shrink to meet them. Growth is not betrayal. It's your birthright. The people who are meant for your next chapter won't cling to the previous one. And when you stop needing validation from people who don't even have what you want, something else will start to happen. You'll trigger people. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your confidence will reflect back everything they're still unsure about in themselves. See, people don't always come at you directly. Most of the time, it's subtle, little comments, passive aggressive jokes, judgment disguised as advice. That's not truth, that's projection. They see in you what they're afraid to face in themselves, so they project that fear onto you. You become the canvas where they throw all their unhealed insecurities. Someone once told me, "She's acting too confident. Who does she think she is?" And I remember thinking, that says nothing about me and everything about how small you've made yourself feel. Because here's the truth: confidence doesn't offend confident people. Boundaries don't bother people who have them. The only ones who react are the ones who feel threatened, not by you, but by what you represent. And jealousy? Jealousy is just misdirected inspiration. It's the soul recognizing something it secretly wants, but the mind, conditioned by fear and doubt, screams, "I could never have that." So instead of celebrating you, they criticize you. Instead of saying, "Wow, maybe that's possible for me too," they shut it down and try to shut you down with it. But that jealousy, that's not hate, that's longing, that's a buried dream waking up, and they don't know how to handle it. So let them project, let them gossip, let them watch. You didn't come here to shrink just because someone else refuses to expand. Their shadow is not your responsibility, your light is. And once you understand that most judgment is just projection, that jealousy is just a cry from someone's unlived potential, you stop internalizing it. But that doesn't mean you tolerate it. That's where boundaries come in. Not walls, not revenge, but energetic protection. And let me be clear, not everyone deserves access to you. Protecting your energy isn't rude, it's sacred. It's wisdom, and it's necessary, because the more you grow, the more you'll realize how draining it is to constantly hold space for people who only take from you. The friend who only calls to vent, never to listen. The coworker who dumps their problems on you, then disappears. The family member who constantly criticizes your choices, but expects you to be there for theirs. You end up feeling like a phone that everyone plugs into to charge while you're left on 2%. And here's what no one tells you: you don't have to be available to everyone just because you were once generous. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to say, "Not today, not this time." You're not a 24/7 emotional gas station. You're not a therapist on demand. You're a human being with limits. And protecting those limits is not selfish, it's self-respect. Start noticing how you feel after you interact with certain people. Do you feel inspired, grounded, energized? Or do you leave feeling depleted, resentful, or small? Your body knows, your intuition knows, your peace is the data. Use it. And if someone calls you cold or distant for choosing yourself, remember, you're not being distant. You're just no longer available for one-sided connections. You're no longer shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown. And that, my love, is growth. That is power. That is protection. And once you start honoring your energy, something even deeper starts to shift. You begin to live in alignment with universal law. You start realizing that everything is energy, every word, every thought, every boundary, every intention. It's all a vibration that either attracts or repels what's meant for you. We're not just here floating through life randomly. There are laws. Just like gravity keeps your body grounded, spiritual laws keep your reality aligned. What you put out always finds its way back to you. Call it karma, call it energy exchange, call it cause and effect, but it's real. When you gossip, when you envy, when you attack someone who's doing what you're afraid to do, that energy doesn't disappear. It circles and it returns. That's why I don't waste my time trying to get revenge, prove a point, or argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding me. My protection doesn't come from pettiness, it comes from alignment. I know who I am, I know what I give, and I trust the universe to handle the rest. Because when you're deeply connected to your purpose, when you're moving from love and truth, you are divinely protected. And anyone who tries to disrupt that won't just be dealing with you, they'll be dealing with the energy they sent out, multiplied. You see, the more you live in truth, the more sacred your presence becomes. And the more sacred your presence becomes, the more careful you must be with your words, your intentions, your focus. You become a vessel, not just of your desires, but of divine purpose. So don't lower your frequency just to meet someone in their chaos. You're not here to match their vibration. You're here to raise it. So let the universe take care of what you no longer have the energy to hold. When you start trusting in that law, in the unseen, in the sacred, you start to feel the most powerful kind of peace. The peace that doesn't depend on being liked, understood, or approved. The peace that simply knows, I am in alignment, and that is enough. And when you start living in alignment, truly aligned with your energy, your purpose, your higher self, you no longer fear speaking your truth. Because when you know who you are, when you're rooted in it, you stop shaking every time someone doesn't approve. You stop asking, what if they don't like it? And start asking, what happens if I betray myself to keep them comfortable? For too long, we've been taught that silence is safer, that softness is polite, that shrinking is feminine, but silence is only sacred when it's a choice, not when it's a survival strategy. I've learned this the hard way. The moments I regret the most weren't the times I spoke up and caused a ripple. It was all the times I stayed quiet, swallowed the truth, and abandoned myself in the name of keeping the peace. But keeping the peace at the cost of your voice isn't peace, it's self-betrayal. And you'll feel it in your body, in your chest, in your gut. That heaviness after a conversation where you didn't say what you needed to say, that tension in your jaw from biting your tongue, that exhaustion from performing a version of yourself that pleases others but dishonors your soul. Here's the truth: your voice is your power, your truth is your frequency. And when you speak from that place, not to attack, not to defend, but to be fully seen, you free yourself. You give others permission to do the same. You raise the vibration of every room you walk into just by being real. Not everyone will like it. Some people will leave, some will talk, some will feel uncomfortable, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your truth disrupts the illusion they've built around you. And that's okay. Let them. If your truth threatens their comfort, then their comfort was built on your silence. And that's not a life you were meant to live. So speak, say it, stand in it, not for validation, not for revenge, but because you were not sent here to live a half life. You were sent here to embody your full truth, even if your voice shakes, even if it's messy, even if you're the only one in the room who says what needs to be said. That is your power. That is your medicine. That is your legacy. So here's what I'll leave you with. Your purpose is sacred. Your energy is gold, and your path is yours alone. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need approval to shine. Speak boldly, love deeply, protect your peace, and never shrink to fit into places you were meant to outgrow. You are not here to be liked. You're here to be real. I hope this message found you at the right time and gave you what you needed to keep moving on. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.